Good evening, everyone. Alice couldn't be here with us this evening. I was asked to step in as chair the meeting for tonight, so that's what we're going to do. And it is 6 o'clock, so I know we're missing a few people. It's actually 6:01, so I'm going to call the meeting to order now at 6:01 and have us get started. We have some things, we have some guests that need to speak, things like that. So we have a quorum. Yes. 6 out of 9 of the voting members are here.
So Todd will be a voting member for
Mark.
Thank you.
Richard is for Alice. You know,
okay,
so
okay.
we have a lot. We have a lot of the alternates are here in place of tonight.
Great.
So let's just kind of tackle a few things in order, the way that we normally do, and let's just start with approval of the minutes. Then we'll open it up to public. And then I'm going to skip down into the agenda because the town, well, we have a little bit about Vernon first, and then a bunch of the town clerks are here, and we want to give them some opportunity to speak. There was a meeting earlier this week, so we're going to do that. So we're going to bounce around the agenda a little bit, but is there a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting?
So moved.
Moved and seconded? Seconded by Beth?
I have an addition that Jill emailed me.
Okay.
I just have to figure out where she wanted to insert it. Let's see. Okay, it's about Brattleboro the board representation. Let's see here. I'm sorry. Maybe I'll just insert it as a separate paragraph.
Okay.
But her comments, and I'll read it. The Brattleboro Town School Board representative stated that they will follow the wishes of the outlying towns regarding board representation, and the 2 Brattleboro BUHS representatives concurred. So that's what I'm going to add into the minutes.
And that's in relation to the conversation around Article 15, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So, yep.
Excellent. Any other additions, deletions, corrections? Yeah.
I have 2. Where it says the Dummerston School Board voted 1 to 3 to support the study committee report and the articles with or without suggested changes. I spoke to Katie Everest to see if this, in her mind, who's our board chair, if that reflected it adequately reflected what happened at the meeting, because the board vote was against supporting the articles. There was a discussion afterwards about if the changes were made, would we support that, but there was no vote taken about that. So it's a little, the vote was 3-1 against the study report as the articles were written. And then there was some discussion afterwards if the changes would be, but we did not have a vote.
Okay.
I was trying, in doing it 1 to 3, I just was trying to be consistent with what the other boards had, the way the other boards had presented the information. Well, so like there was no confusion. There's confusion.
So if we just, in that sentence, if after report, if we just said, as the articles were written, period, and then the articles with or without, then we just get rid of everything else, is that okay?
Say that again.
Yes.
Just, the Dummerston School Board voted 1 to 3 to support the study committee report as the articles were written,
so
period?
In reading that, in 1 to 3 to support, what is your understanding of that?
That it failed.
That it failed, yep.
Yeah.
No. I asked 3 lay people, and they said that I just asked 3 people at work and said, how do you read this? And they said that it passed. So I think it's a semantic.
I think you could say 1 approved and 3.
That would be great.
Yeah.
That would be very
so,
clear. Okay.
So we'll add that end piece on as the articles are written, and then 1 approved and 3. Okay. Is that
great.
Fits that? Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then the next paragraph down.
Can I just, what are we doing about articles with or without suggested changes? Are we making that a separate sentence, or? I thought that was important to add in there because that was a clarification that Ron had asked, and you know.
I don't think Katie really weighed in on that, and I think I was kind of waffly about that, and I said, you know.
Do you have a problem if we leave it in? just as a separate sentence.
I don't have a problem.
Articles with or without
But we
suggested
didn't
changes.
actually vote about with the suggested changes.
Right, because we're going to period, and then the word
All right.
articles will be at the beginning of a new sentence.
So, yeah, I'll make it a new sentence.
That's
The Dummerston board, yeah, okay, so I'll fix it.
Okay, excellent. And what was the other one?
The next one was, I didn't recollect this from the meeting, the next paragraph down, about budget ballots being commingled, and I rewatched the tape, and it's not on there. At that, Ron said that he would check with legal counsel about that on this meeting date. Jody read about the Donna Russo Savage, who talked about budget ballot commingling, but this was not on the tape from this meeting.
That's what I had in my notes. And
We
that's
did
what
talk about it in our school board meeting.
Oh, we talked about it here.
No, we
Because
talked about it
I
here.
needed to go back, and I have since gone back to Counsel and AOE
Right.
to clarify this, but,
Yeah.
But you said you would go back, and it says per legal counsel. This middle sentence,
Per legal counsel, Article 9 is not required to be commingled, while the ballots on the unified district budget in Article 14 must be commingled. That's what were told at that time.
right.
Not at the meeting.
Yes. Otherwise, it wouldn't be in my notes.
I rewatched the meeting and it was nowhere in the meeting. If you can point out the time on the video. But I recall this body actually agreeing that both commingling provisions should count. And I heard Ron say that he would check with counsel.
We couldn't do it for the budget. That's what I recalled from the meeting, and that's my notes.
I think the main point though is, let's be clear, what is actually there. So I think if the minutes say what Amy understood last time, but let's get it clear for right now. Because I know for, afterwards we were talking about that, or somebody asked me about that, and it
Yeah.
was
And I have
confused
that
in my head,
in the
so.
latest draft.
Because in the report, we changed the wording of Article 9, but we didn't change it for Article 14.
Yeah,
And
and
that's
this-
where this came
Yeah,
from.
that's right. And then this copy is a little different.
Right, and I know there's been changes since, so.
So I think the minutes are right, but we need to look at it again.
Right.
So we just need to figure out how to, those couple of sentences, and so that everybody's good.
Well, Article 9 is not required to be commingled.
Okay, which is what we were told a long time ago. And then the unified district budget in Article 14 must be commingled.
And Ron will clarify, do you want to add?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so I'll make that two separate sentences, and with the addition of Ron will clarify with legal counsel.
Okay.
but it's also confusing because Donna Russo Savage said, Jody read, because I got to, nothing like watching the meeting again, that the ballot, that we could vote on the budget ballot, her example from Donna Russo Savage was the budget ballot could be commingled.
Right.
And so it's odd now that our legal counsel is saying that the budget ballot cannot be commingled when Donna Russo
Okay,
Savage's
well,
example.
right now we're just talking about the minutes from the last meeting,
Right, sorry.
and Ron is gonna fill us in later on
Okay,
about
okay.
what he found out when he talked to our legal counsel and the AOE.
Yep.
Right,
Sorry.
so we'll get
Sorry.
clarification about
Okay.
what has to happen in our proposal at that point. All right, any other corrections or deletions or anything else in relation to the minutes of our last meeting? No? All right, so all in favor of approving the minutes as amended signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed or abstentions?
Abstain.
Ian's abstaining, okay? All right.
I have to know why.
Because I missed half the conversation
Okay.
about the amendments, because
Okay.
I arrived late.
All right.
Yeah, no problem, okay?
Okay.
All right, so the minutes have passed.
Can I just ask, I didn't write down who
Okay,
moved and seconded.
I moved.
Richard moved
And I
and Beth
Okay,
seconded.
Thank you. And then Ian abstained.
Yep.
Came in late, okay,
Okay,
yeah.
all right, so let's take a few minutes. Is there anyone that's here from public, with the exception of the town clerks? I'm just gonna, because you guys are gonna have, you have a special place in our meeting. But is there anybody else from the public that would like to speak now? And we will work on having space at the end as well. Okay, so again, as always, just if you could stand and identify yourself and what town you're from, that would be great. Why don't we kind of start here at my left, your right, and work this way. So Jeanette, I think you're first.
Thank you. I don't know if it's appropriate now or at the end, but I have a couple concerns. One of my concerns is going to be addressed by the town clerk, so I won't address that. But is there a bird in here? Oh, it's sorry, Jill.
It's one study member who's on the speaker.
Oh,
So
okay.
she's at a soccer game, but I've lost the call.
Okay. So I'm sorry I didn't identify myself, Jeanette White, and I do live in Putney. I have a couple concerns here, and I'm not sure. One is the 10-day notice to, if there's going to be a vote to close a school, the 10-day notice, and I didn't have time this afternoon to check and make sure that that actually complies with open meeting laws. If 10 days is enough public notice, and it doesn't say whether it's business days or calendar days, but it has to,
Where did you find that out?
Yeah,
in the articles that I have from,
We say there's a year.
yeah.
huh?
A year.
Article.
No, it says that there's a,
Which article?
it's Article 7D. And it says, if after conducting the hearings, the Board of Directors intends to vote on whether to close a school, it shall give public notice to its intent to hold a vote on whether to close a school, stating the reason for the closure at least 10 days prior to the vote. That's after all the study has been done. So I just want to make sure that complies with open meeting
Yeah.
regulations.
So that's just the, you know, you have to have a public meeting within 10 days of any vote. But the material above that is really the key, that no closures for the first 5 years, and then if there is interest in closing it, there'll be at least 4 public hearings.
Right.
So all of that would take place. And that 10 days is just kind of a, you know, statutory.
I should admit that I chair the Government Operations Committee, and what we deal with is municipal elections, all of the open meeting, public records. That's our, so I just want to make sure that this complies with the state open meeting laws, because it does say there will be, that public notice 10 days before the vote. And if that, so it should say calendar days or business days, and I want to make sure that that complies with open meeting law.
I think we can just verify
That's
that and
just
make
a-
any correction.
Yeah, that's just a
Yep.
thing. The other concern I have is that the voting for the representatives from the different towns will be done district-wide, which means that, in fact, Brattleboro will be electing all of the representatives, because Brattleboro has a voter checklist that is more than equal to all the other towns combined. And I checked with Donna Rousseau-Savage and also with Jim Condos, the Secretary of State, to see if that was the way it had to be. And Donna said her response was that because there would be no more districts, that it would be district-wide, the vote. However, Secretary Condos's opinion was that because they're designated to come from the town, not from the Putney School District, but from Putney Town and Dummerston Town, that implies that they should be elected by the town as opposed to by district-wide. So there is some discrepancy here on the opinion of that, and because Secretary Condos deals with elections all the time, I would go with his opinion, and I would ask you to change that. That's my comment.
Thank you.
Because they are elected from the town, not from the town school district, and there still is a town.
Mm-hmm. Yep, thank you. All right, moving over, yeah.
I have to stand up?
Yeah, Lindsay, tell us where you're from.
Ines McGillian from Dummerston, and my comments sort of flow from yours, Jeanette. I continue to have an objection to at-large voting as well, and a 100% at-large voting scheme deprives the 3 small towns and Brattleboro of a single true legal representative that they alone vote on and who represents only them. What we have right now is a mere residency requirement, and I think legally that's not what the law or the Supreme Court considers a true representative. My reading of 706B, the study committee statute, is that it appears to require that each member district have at least one true legal representative, not a residency requirement fulfilled in at-large voting. So I believe each district requires at least one directly voted representative. I also want all the small towns to remember that whether voting is at large or by district, the three small towns have respectively 10, 11, and 14% of the voting power, and Brattleboro has a very heavily weighted vote. It has 64% of the voting power. And when you look at the voter registrations, the imbalance is still there. I also wanted to object to the commingling of both the ballot and the director election votes. My understanding when I came away from the meeting last time was that this body had agreed that commingling would be taken out. And I just printed out the copy of the articles online before I came to this meeting, and I see that those two provisions are still in the document. So I'd like to hear how that came to be.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else from the public that wants to speak now? Okay, so I think because we have a newer version of the draft of the proposal that hasn't been approved by us yet, I think that'll address some of the issues that you just brought up, hope later on. Because the one that's online is...
It's the one that I'm going to pass on.
Okay, all right. So we'll talk about that when we get to that point in the thing. So we're going to, like I said, we're going to skip down to, what did you count Clerks now?
Yeah, why don't we do the third bullet under the study committee work session? We had a meeting with the town clerks yesterday, and I think most of them are here tonight, and that's great. And I'm just going to summarize some of the issues, and if there's other questions, I welcome any of the town clerks to jump in. But a big concern was the date of November 8th, and I think we, myself, Frank, Alice, we had had a phone conversation with the AOE rep and our attorney just before the last study committee meeting, and we were kind of thinking it would make sense to put the vote off based on their advice. So then when we got some concerns from the town clerks, things like the tabulation of the ballots, the fact that you know, we were hoping that we could create a ballot that would be kind of the same format to be tabulated. That can't happen because we missed a deadline for the towns. So that's a big issue. For the small towns, it's going to create a lot of work. Actually, for all towns, it's going to create a lot of work. The deadline for the petitions, petitions for people to be directors would have to be September 23rd, and that's not realistic for people to, you know, if we submitted petitions, let's say Monday, it's really not enough time to get petitions signed and then get back, and September 23rd is just not gonna make it. You know, I know we had talked about doing at the same time to save money. It's actually, it seems like it's gonna cost more money based on the input that we had. Through our discussion, we talked about, so what would be preferable in terms of what would suffice for the study committee, knowing that we need to do the Vernon withdrawal, the merger, and voting for directors. And we just kind of looked at other dates, and the thing that we came up with is if we put off the November date, it's a national election, it gets very confusing, and I'm going to ask somebody to speak about this when you add another ballot into it, that it might make sense to think about January for the Vernon withdrawal vote, and then March 7th, which is town meeting in all of the towns, to do the merger votes there. That the thing that it does for us, it gives us the time to you know, make any sort of changes that we need to. It also gives us all the deadlines very clear. We have those from the state. It doesn't put the pressure on the town clerks that I think we would be doing, which I don't think we understood the implications. And quite frankly, I think if we were able to meld those ballots together, it might be a different result. But I think, let's see, Erin was there, Erin checked for Guilford, Amy, you were there, and Jill, you were there. So I don't know if you want to jump in. I was glad that study committee members were able to be at that meeting.
That was really helpful and informative, and I thought that we had a little more conversation with the town clerks than we had, so it was pretty evident that we weren't coordinated in our efforts. So, and the feedback you guys gave was really great. So,
I thought it was once again a time that we got a chance to hear from public and adjust ourselves to what the public is asking for. There's been other emails from people that have come, at least to me, and some comments that I've received saying that waiting for a little bit would be perhaps better. And truly, we got a lesson in politics that I had no idea.
yep.
We learned all sorts of
The practical matters.
practical things like ballot formation and such.
So I guess does any of the town clerks want to address the entire group and people at home on BCTV and things like that to kind of explain where you're all coming from?
Yeah, we'll let Annette speak.
You raised your hand to appoint
Denise
Annette.
Drummond from Putney. I would like to say that if you wait and do it in January or whatever the other dates that we were discussing at the meeting, that November you get us information for 46 so we can inform the voters. We're going to see a lot of foot traffic, and I would like to have information to get out to the people. So either a table set up, Amy didn't want to sit at one, but just a table set up with information so that people can be informed about what is going on, so that they can make good decisions when it comes time to vote. And Annette is going to speak to the rest.
Thank you for listening to us. I'm Annette Cappy, town clerk here in Brattleboro. And it was great that we had the opportunity to meet with some of you earlier this week. That was very helpful. And I think one of the points that we made at that meeting was we as clerks and municipal side of things are so unfamiliar with what all of your deadlines are as you are with ours. So I think the main issue here is that we have missed a lot of the deadlines to get this going for November. It requires, if we had met earlier, we probably could have done it for November by piggybacking on the other ballots, on the general ballot. But because of a number that we'll have for turnout and 2 ballots, it makes for a very confusing election. Federal elections do not have the same deadlines and the same requirements necessarily as local elections, and the November is a federal. So we're talking apples and oranges, where if we talk adding this on to a March, we're talking apples and apples. So things can flow into it smoothly. If you want this in January, we're agreeable to that too. When we had talked earlier in the year, we had talked maybe of voting in June, and I think everybody was fine with June. We're fine with most any date that you'll come up with, except November 8th because of the confusion. And there's a lot of confusion for the voters too. And there's a lot of extra preparation that goes into having a town vote and a federal vote. It often looks like all we do is, we run our list of voters and we bring our pencils and we sit and we meet all of our townspeople that day. And that is like 0.1% of the election. So there's so much more to it. But I think January, the dates that we talked about yesterday, would work great. I mean, that gives us plenty of time to warn this, for you to get your information out, and pretty much any date that you would like to set. I think you'll see there's a consensus that we will be happy to oblige. But if there are any other questions that anybody has about the mechanics of the election or more of our concerns, I think any of us would be ready to answer any of them. So thank you for hearing us, and I hope you'll reconsider your date.
And I want to speak for myself too. I know that at our last meeting when we talked about this, I wrongly assumed, and earlier today Annette and I had a conversation, so I got, I think, some of the same education that some of you got yesterday from all the town clerks, that I just assumed doing less days of voting made less work, as opposed to setting everything up for another day or potentially 2 other days. You know, just it seemed like that for me. That seemed like a simple thing, but we all learned in this process, which is great. So I thank you all for your time meeting with everybody yesterday, and the email. I think everybody on the study committee got the email also, which kind of explained some things too, which was really helpful. So thank you. So I think what we need to do is we need to do a motion to postpone the vote on the Vernon situation until January, and the proposal is for January 10th. So there'd be a special vote, and that would be, I believe, the only ballot question would be January 10th on the Vernon piece, and then March 7th would be the merger vote and the vote for the new officers for the new entity that is created as part of at the merger vote. And I think that part of the question is related to, I know that we talked about in the past, not confusing things by having the Vernon vote and the merger vote on the same ballot, having those as 2 separate voting situations, which is why there's 2 dates that we're talking about.
If I could speak.
Yeah, go for it. Yes, please.
Yeah, so, and that's really the message that we received from the AOE, Donna Russo-Savage, and the Secretary of Education, along with our council, just thinking, if you combine these 2 issues, you get too much confusion. So keep it separate. One on the release of Vernon for BUHS 6, and obviously there'll need to be information about, so how does that tie in with a vote down the road, and then a separate vote for the merger, and that's what they're recommending.
Okay. So that's the plan at this point. Quickly, sure.
I thought that the ratification vote by the towns had to happen 90 days after notice issued for the Vernon vote. And isn't January well outside that 90-day period? And also, is it the province of the study committee to schedule the Vernon vote? My understanding was that it was the school districts who would get together, basically the school boards would have to get together and choose the date for the Vernon vote. I don't understand what
I think I can, if I can interrupt you, I might be able to answer that question. What we're asking for tonight is for the study committee to motion and approve and suggest a January 10th vote and then March 7th vote for those 2 separate things. That's what we as a study committee do, to then release it so that it can leave us, because it's related to the study committee work, to then release it to go to everybody else that needs to approve that. Because if we need to give them some suggestion. We can't just say to all the town school boards, pick a day to do a vote. You know, we're giving them a suggestion, and as the study committee, we're going to put that suggestion together and say, this is what we're suggesting. Do that. The 90-day piece, to be honest, I don't know about, but
It's 721A, 16 VSA 721A.
we'll need to look at that, and we will. Okay, sure.
Just a question. January 10th is so close to the holidays, you know, which don't stop until January 1st. I didn't know whether it was too close, if it could be put off a couple of weeks later.
We actually considered December, but we were told that the holidays.
Bad idea.
So I think we have to look at the state requirements in terms of the time frame, and then come back with, so maybe to modify the motion or an appropriate date based on the statute.
Okay.
But an appropriate date cannot be November.
Right,
Is that correct?
right, yeah.
On that one piece,
Yeah.
just for the Vernon release.
Yes.
Okay.
So why would we want to put in a clause or an appropriate date? Who is going to give us the appropriate date?
I'll have to check with.
We'll have to check with statute.
Statute with our council about, so can January 10th be the date? Does it have to be within 90 days of that vote?
It's 90 days of the vote being certified.
Certified.
If Walter has any comment on that, but it's the clerk of the Vernon board, which
we have not sent in our notification yet.
Okay.
So if you wait, we'll be all set.
That's right.
Yeah, hold on.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Ken McCaffrey of Brattleboro. When you mention dates like January 10th or whatever, I trust that the study committee will also put a major effort into alerting the public.
Yeah.
I mean, just to say we're having a vote on January 10th, I think, who would know?
Right.
So I
Yeah.
hope there'll be,
Well, and we have forums scheduled coming up, and there'll be more information about that and later on in this meeting, but also we have forums scheduled on a variety of things related to this, and this would just be one more thing to add to all of that education that needs to happen. All right, so we need to put this and get this moving forward in an appropriate way. If I could have a motion to postpone the vote on the Vernon to an appropriate date per statute, and then the vote for the merger and for the new officers of the new entity on March 7th.
So moved.
Thank you, Beth.
Second?
Seconded. Okay, moved and seconded by Alice. All right, any other questions, comments from the study committee about that? All right,
So the voting members should vote.
vote yes for the voting members. So all those in favor, say aye.
Wait, just 1 second. Do we need Kim? I told her it's time, she was gonna.
No, we have a quorum without Kim, so
All right.
we're fine. Yeah, we have a quorum without Kim.
Just
so
trying to
we're-
run over.
That's all right. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions?
Abstain.
And Ian's abstaining. Okay.
And I gotta know why for the notes.
Yeah.
I'm abstaining because, having stated a clear opposition to merger, I don't feel it appropriate for me to vote on the timing of the vote, which could affect that outcome.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you. All right. So we're all set there. And again, clerks, thank you very much for your time yesterday and tonight. We really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. So going back to our agenda, we're going to start at the top under study committee work session and go into article update for council and agency from the Council and AOE Education.
Sorry.
That's okay. So coming around is the latest draft of the study committee report and articles of agreement. And Ron will walk us through the changes from the last time.
Okay, so this is dated September 8th. It is on the website. So you can see that.
Is there a copy from right after the meeting? From August 30th?
I have mine. That's what I'm referring to.
No, it's the August one. I would love a copy of the August one.
There wasn't one from August. It was still the July 12th.
Yeah, you know, the July 12th was the last posted, but there was an August 25th and an August 30th. And I can get you one, but mine's all.
I already asked Donna for it. I'm sure she'll get back to you quickly.
Okay.
So.
All right.
I don't think she has it because it wasn't posted.
She does. The August 30th version, I think she has a copy.
Okay. All right.
Moving on.
So, if you look at page 2, she actually asked Marissa Savage when we were submitting our last study committee report that she gave me a list of questions, and she thought, you can see in bold print under the 3rd paragraph, she felt it would be important to provide any sort of documentation, any research that we did, and she knew that we had the program overview, so that's where I put in Appendix A, Act 46 Program Overview. And in this document, you can go to the back where Appendix A is. I think you've all seen this. So, I think it's starting on page like 11 or 12.
12, yeah. Backside of 11.
So that's the 3 pages of that program overview. The next thing she asked for was the enrollment trends, and we had developed that for our presentations. And so the next document there is the, I think it's like 4 pages of the enrollment. And then in the next paragraph, she had asked for the program expansion document. So that's in this report as well. So in doing that, I just felt like it would make sense to have Appendix A being those 3 documents, and then if you look at page 4, change those documents to Appendix B. And there was a question that came up on the first one in Appendix B. So let's go to that. About the homestead tax rate.
Which is actually the page number 12, I think. This is the beginning of Appendix B.
Yeah, it's that one. So Frank changed the heading, cleaned up the last number at the bottom that was erroneous, didn't need to be there, and then included the statement at the bottom to clarify the questions that had come up at the last meeting. Any questions on that? Okay, so we also have the PICUS report, and then the tax impact page without Vernon.
What are the italics for? Page 3, page 4.
I think those are just holdovers from previous versions, because I have those in my August 30th.
Is there a reason they're italic?
I think it was probably from conversations with Donna Russo Savage that she suggested some language. And so that one on the bottom of page 3 is from her. And that's in the previous draft as well, so that should be, I can clean that up. Is there another one somewhere?
Yeah, halfway down on page 4, it's.
Oh, yeah, offer, again, that was from her. She said, you know, that makes it a little clearer than a previous draft. So those will be changed. Okay. The next one that she recommended was Article 9 on page 8. So it's the paragraph that's underlined in bold pursuant to the provisions of Title 16 VSA 706JB. That's all what it's been. The terms of the directors elected in November, so that would change. Shall be the 2, 3, 4 respectively. And again, she put this in for clarification. For purposes hereof, the terms of office shall commence on the date of the organizational meeting of the Unified District, when the initial school directors will begin their term of office and end on the date Unified Annual Meetings in the spring of 2019, 20, and 21. Thereafter, terms of office shall begin and expire on the date of the school district's annual meeting. So we knew all that, but she thinks that makes it clearer. If everybody's okay with that, I'll just, next draft, just get rid of that. Okay. All right, so then the question about commingling in 2 places. Yeah, I'm gonna have to get my notes. All right, so they're saying that by statute, it's the second line, the ballots shall be commingled. So we don't have any choice in that. And she said it will not be in the first time. The first time, the district town clerks will have their results, and they need to send it to the Agency of Education to certify those results. That's the first time. So that's first time. It doesn't really apply to this article. It's just a procedural thing that they have to follow. But then they said, but then they should be commingled after that.
What statute? She meant, because I looked and I looked and I looked, and there's no statute that requires commingling of a director vote. Not one.
That's what they're telling us.
Well, I mean, presumably you asked her, because I would ask for a statute, because commingling is not required by law. And in fact, for a budget vote, the law very specifically says that the municipality has to vote at an election whether to commingle a budget. So I'm a pretty good researcher and I couldn't find it. So I'm wondering what Donna Russo Savage is citing as authority for a required commingled vote for directors.
I'll be in touch with her tomorrow. And you know,
And it was also,
you were part of that discussion, right?
Yeah, well, Chris Leopold's general background on that issue was that the only provision for a non-commingled vote in an election is in the union school statute. There is no other provision specifically for a non-commingled vote. So he said that the statutes are not clear. It would be good for a technical amendment to clarify this, but his point to us was that because the only provision for a non-commingled vote is in a budget statute, it's a stretch to assume that that budget statute could apply to election of officers.
Well, I think that what that statement amounts to a statement that commingling is required by default. And I've looked in other jurisdictions and I haven't found that. It's not in the Australian ballot statute, which is a separate statute. I would urge this body to refrain from voting on whether to commingle until you get further clarification from council. You can consult with your towns. You know, I think each member of this body should think long and hard about whether this vote should be commingled, especially the small towns.
The other point of reference that Chris gave us was that, again, the commingling is the traditional format of a town meeting, of any town meeting, particularly when you are a public body from the same membership, meaning the default is a voice vote off the floor, and for example at BUHS annual meeting or any union meeting, when there's a vote, there is no precedent that says before you vote disclose the name of your town and then let's count all the Dummerston votes, let's count all the Putney votes and so on. So his point again was that the original format of voting is commingled, and there is no provision to separate that unless, as we know, in a union meeting for a budget, there's a call 7 seconds, a call for a ballot, a paper ballot, and then 7 seconds, and then you do have a written ballot that could be counted by town. But again, there's no requirement to disclose that. Okay, now that we have our membership towns all voting, how did we do individually? So his point is that the tradition in Vermont is a commingled vote, and there is really no provision that says you can vote otherwise, except that one provision on a union budget.
I think that is a load of bull.
okay, well, they're gonna follow through with with council and and everybody at the state and get some clarification on that. So let's stay tuned. Alice?
Well, I think the one concern would be, it's not so, I don't want to say so much on the budget issue. I think it's on voting on our members that we're voting in from each town. So I want, if we're commingling those votes, we don't know who's voting from the outside towns to vote on our own members. So I think that's the key right there, is we want to know who's from Guilford, who got voted in and who voted for them, or how many, I think that's really the issue there.
Well, in my memory, and
And I
please
know we're
correct me
supposed
if
to be
I'm,
one unification,
Right.
but it becomes skewed when we are technically different towns voting on the same issue. And I can appreciate where we're going with this, but I think for the outlying towns, we clearly wanna know who's voting, and, because that's part of our tradition.
well, and I think too, my memory on this too is that because we're doing the at-large piece, that because we're doing at-large members and an at-large voting system, that muddies the water in this, and it's not as clean as I think some of us want it to be because of that piece. And I want to remind everybody that we decided on the at-large voting members so that there's at least the potential of the smaller towns not being completely overwhelmed by Brattleboro. And that was the reasoning for doing that.
So
I want,
second,
yeah, go ahead, Brian. Okay.
the second time it comes up is in Article 14, for the annual budget vote. Again, the advice was to commingle them. The town clerks, there's an election issue with that too. If you have some that are not commingled and then the budget is, let's say the directors are commingled and the budget is not, that creates a real hardship for them. So again, the AOE, our council, we didn't bring this up with the clerks. It actually came up as part of our conversation. It seems to make sense to make it consistent with what you have to do with the directors. And that was the advice we were given.
I just have a question. Can you go just back for a second to the first time we do this?
Yes.
Can you, I don't
Yeah,
understand
this is what the AOE is told us in our council, that the first time directors are voted in, and I think it's just because it's a first time occurrence, the town clerks from each town will need to certify or get those numbers to the Agency of Education. And the Secretary of Education actually certifies those vote tallies.
But what, I'm just curious of why the first time is different from any other.
I think because we're not a unified district.
Because it's organizing the
We don't
district.
exist yet.
Right.
That
Also
same
the-
vote
also
votes
the-
us to exist.
But that those are not, I'm just curious about why those would not be commingled.
Because you're not a joint, and
I see, yep.
To
Yeah,
me, the
yep,
whole
I
reason
see
this
that.
whole thing comes up is once you're a joint entity,
Then it's all the same.
it's all the same and we're supposedly all caring about the same things, and so it shouldn't matter so much whether the votes are
Right.
commingled or not.
Mhm.
That's what I understand is
Right.
the
Yep.
thought
Yep.
process.
The other provision was that the law says that the clerk of the board, the clerk of the union board will certify the vote, and there is no clerk.
Right.
So.
Right.
So it
Some of
has to
this
go
is-
to the Department of, it has to go to
Yeah,
education.
so there's the default.
And so in those
Understand
40 districts that voted last town meeting, that was the process that they
Mhm.
used to certify their directors.
Okay, thank you.
Also, those votes couldn't possibly be commingled because that's at the same time as our vote to approve the merger, and if any one town votes no, then they,
Right.
Right.
so
So-
that has to be separate.
Yeah, it's separate for that piece. Beth?
I'm wondering if they stated the reasons that it was kind of ambiguous what the statute said. I'm wondering if they gave any examples of why we wouldn't want to do it? If it's kind of ambiguous and you could almost go either way and they're recommending this way, did they say why we would not want to?
I thought that was what I just said, was the underlying tone. I think that's the same reason why they said we shouldn't do something else. Because we're one entity. So all of us care equally in all of our towns,
I
about
guess-
all of the kids in all the towns.
I guess I'm thinking more about the election of the directors, than of the budget. Is there a because that strikes
Because
a
we're-
chord with me too.
Because again, we're electing, everybody is electing everybody.
From that, and that goes back to the at-large piece.
But so because of the at-large, that would be the only thing that would convince me. I think, is it required that if you have at-large, thou shalt have
I don't
commingled,
think
or-
that matters. I think what we were told is the director's vote needs to be commingled. And I don't think it had, I mean, it makes sense about the at-large thing, but I think if you did it by proportion, you'd still have to commingle.
Well, no, because
After
we
the
do it by
first,
proportion
after the
and vote
first.
by town.
Right.
No, that's kind of.
I'm just gonna say, if I were a representative, because there is a representative of towns, I would very much want to know how the people that I'm representing feel about a budget. If my town hates the budget, I either have to work harder to educate them as to what the budget is. Otherwise, I'm not being a good representative, and if I don't have that feedback loop from my town, or if they hate me as a director, but people in Brattleboro loved me as a director, I'd want that feedback. And I just think it's part of democracy to have that feedback. Am I serving? Am I representing? And that's the whole reason I think it's good to have that information. That it's.
I absolutely understand where you guys are coming from. I think that the shift is the same shift that I made as a parent of Academy School, coming on to caring about Green Street, caring about BES, caring about Head Start, early Head Start, and which school is it?
Oak Grove.
Oak Grove. Because it's no longer just about that. And I understand what you guys are saying, so the second part of the statement is Brattleboro, once again, I think Ricky will go along with this, I know Kim and Mark and Todd standing here today, goes with what the outlying town wants. We cede to you guys on this proportional representation that Inez keeps bringing up, we cede to you guys on this sort of thing. This is, I understand this is much more an issue for you guys.
And I think what I'm questioning is that we had it, I think as a group, we had agreed that we did not want commingled. So I would think that the burden of proof would be on proving to us that we can't have non-commingled ballots, rather than saying this is why you should, why can't we?
I think, I know we put that to Chris Leopold, and he gave us the, you know, essentially what I just gave you in terms of no provision in statute other than budget, and the traditional format is a commingled format. So he was coming at it from a legal point of view, but he made it pretty clear that the statutes are not very clear. They're not.
But is it traditional?
I would also want to just reiterate
law?
what Ron said. You know, we heard from the town clerks. That again, Ron said it, but the issue around the burden for the town clerks, as they articulated to us, is. Annette has said that they always use the tabulator for elections because of the amount of votes to count. And when you split the votes, they can't do that. Generally, they have one machine and they have to program it, and there's a reason why it's not an efficient process for them. So it's not the only reason. It's just one of a few reasons that having a common format is a benefit.
So what would it mean then if we were to push back a little bit harder on that regarding the director representatives and say, you've told us it's cloudy, we're going to push forward on this position. What response might we get back if we were to continue to push it?
Well, those are the questions I'm going to have. And
So I think that
I'll get a reference to a statute, and
I mean, because it is cloudy, it almost sounds like there's no reason that we couldn't go with the way that we choose of wanting it.
Yeah. So we'll get clarification on statute.
I'll try.
But we're just talking about directors. We're not talking about budget. We're solely just talking about.
That's what I have. Yeah.
Right. So we'll get some clarification.
May I ask a question or make a comment?
Sure.
So you're talking about commingling the votes, but my question goes even a step farther back than that. Why are Brattleboro people voting on the representative from Putney? And I know that Donna said that it's because there's no longer a Putney school district. However, Jim Condos, well, I got an email from him this afternoon, and he said, but there still is a Putney town. And if you're having a representative from Putney and from Dummerston, they are the ones that should be electing them. So the question of commingling goes a step beyond, and if there's any issues about, I mean, he was very clear and I will forward that, his email, and he quoted the statutes about representing, that people who are representing an area and have to be a member of that, a resident of that town, and it should be a registered voter probably, not just a resident.
So I have that as another question.
Okay.
And I think what we've been told, and you can check with Jim if you send me his email, I will. Proportional voting, that's true. But when it's at large, I don't think it is.
No, I'm not questioning the at large.
But that's what the code, that it
us.
comes in process because of the
It doesn't have to. You can have it different.
We've been told it had to.
And I will clarify.
So we're going to clarify that.
You were told that by your attorney?
The AOE, Honorable Savage.
But they don't do
our
elections, so I would go with Jim Condos. I mean, they're not the elections experts, Jim Condos is. And the other thing I can say is that we can change the statutes. I mean, that's what we do. So if it's unclear.
But we're not going to hang up our work waiting for Montpelier to change statutes.
Right.
So let's keep moving forward. Okay, we're going to do some following up. We're going to get some answers to some questions.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Ken.
Seems to me absurd, I'm looking at page 8, that we have at large and then these various towns, and essentially what you seem to be saying is they're all at large.
They all are at large, but
I know you have to reside in Dummerston to be that person,
Yeah.
but it seems to me if the towns want to elect their own representatives, and there's nothing specifically in the statutes that says you can't do that, why is this group even considering it?
Well, I'm going to answer your question quickly, and then so we can move on. But essentially, this group had heard enough from the representatives on this group from the small towns that they wanted the opportunity to not have it be 5 or 6 from Brattleboro and 1 from each of the other outlying towns. And this gives the opportunity for there to be definitely, we'll use Dummerston because it's the first one alphabetically after Brattleboro, definitely 1 from Dummerston, but in theory, all 3 of those at-large people that are on the bottom row could all be Dummerston, could all live in Dummerston. So there could be 4 people from Dummerston on the new unified board, and that was the will of the body at the time.
But elected by Brattleboro.
Well, elected by everybody,
Well,
and the Brattleboro people are elected by everybody too. But that's what you have to do.
I do have to wonder though, with this new information, if the small towns may think differently about the proportional versus the at-large.
Mm-hmm.
So you're absolutely right that at that time, with the information that we had, we all voted for this at-large, but with this new information that's come in, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. So we'll get some clarification and we'll know and we can make some changes.
So I will ask, so what would be the proportional
Yeah.
numbers? And I think it's 6.
Yeah, it's 6, 1, 1, and 1. Yeah.
Right.
We had that before.
Yeah.
But then you can vote by your own people.
Yeah.
You know, hybrid.
All right. So why don't we move on to? Is there anything else in the related to any changes from the last one to the September 8th version?
How about the dates in here? You've got November 8th.
Well, obviously.
Yeah, obviously we'll change the dates, but that vote happened tonight, so we didn't know that because we could have decided not to do that. Okay, so the next thing on our agenda is Vernon and the BUHS separation agreement.
So I'm going to ask Frank to speak to this. We've had, we're working with Paul Giuliani, who is working with Larry Slasson, the Vernon attorney, to come up with the agreement that relieves Vernon from the BUHS debt and assets. So.
So at this point, we do have a draft document. The discussion on dates, I think, has a bearing, and obviously this just occurred yesterday, so that hasn't been processed through a draft that reflects that. But essentially, the issue that we were talking about a little earlier regarding Vernon and the requirement for the clerk of the Vernon School Board, which is Walter, having a obligation to certify the vote and send that to the Secretary of Education it begins the process of then putting in place a withdrawal agreement between the BUHS board and the Vernon board, which then gets incorporated into the article in which is warned and voted on. There's a reference in the article to a separation agreement. None of this really happens though until the vote is certified. So this is just in anticipation that will occur. As these dates are firmed up, a document can be crafted, and then it only is required to be approved by the two entities involved, the BUHS board and the Vernon board. But each local school district board does warn that vote, and in that action, there's a reference to the separation agreement. So I would assume that each board would want to consider that separation agreement. The gist of it is, as Ron just said, it's intended to be quite simple, which is there is a wash between the interest Vernon has in the assets of BUHS and the member towns relieving them from the obligation to pay the remaining debt. And the assumption is that those two valuations are even, so no one's cutting anybody a check.
Okay. And Walter, do you know if there's been any discussion at the board level?
Well, they're meeting right as we speak, and then we have our regular meeting on Monday, and we're supposed to, now that that window after the vote is passed, we were going to, I think, try to finalize things at the beginning by our meeting next week.
Okay. Excellent. Okay.
Rick?
We're gonna keep moving. Okay.
I have a question on what Frank just said.
What's that?
Do we have the actual figures on pro and con for Vernon and not just assumptions?
So we talked with Paul Giuliani, the attorney that is working on this draft, and he said that probably not wise for the boards to try to clarify that on their own. It's fine for anyone to try to analyze that, but you're getting into something that has no precedent, and the idea of evaluating the assets of the Union High School from the point of view of the intent to sell is a difficult thing to quantify. And again, the step after that is, you know, it's an unworkable scenario where there is a division of the assets so that one entity leaving could somehow sell it, or I'm not sure what they would do with it. But his point was there's really no basis and there's no practical value of doing a quantification of that. That
That's
exercise.
very cloudy.
It seems like on a common sense point of view, you would want to know that.
Yes.
And certainly, it's easy to know the debt. The debt's 11.2 million in total. And Vernon's about 11% of the total current population of BUHS, so that's easy math. It's the other side that's much more difficult to put a number on and then say, well, is Vernon's interest in the assets of BUHS campus building and all the things that go with it worth more or less than that? So he has no advice for us in terms of how to quantify that, and he's suggesting that it probably will raise more questions than it answers.
Okay.
Certainly does.
Yes. All right. All right, so the next thing on our agenda is information forums, and it says on our agenda required within 10 days of November 8th, which we've already moved the November 8th date, but I think we do have forums scheduled in a variety of the towns, and it's probably good to confirm that with everybody, have everybody on the same page about those forums. because that's part of this process along the way. So, Ron, do you have a master list? Yes?
Yeah, just in terms of the dates that we have, so the State Board of Education review of September 20th will be put off. I don't know if it'll be in October or November or December, but I'll get clarification on that. We did have a list of public hearings, information meetings, and they're pretty well aligned with board meetings. So I'm just gonna go through.
I just wonder if it's too early or not.
Well, I'll tell you, the thing we're hearing from the town clerks is the more information that we can get out, the better.
No, yeah, I get that, I just think we may need to have another one closer.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But-
You know, I think the ones that we have in September and October, we're gonna need to kind of say, okay, so we need another series of them,
Okay.
definitely.
This is our baseline of where we're at with this stuff here.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it'll
And
be
let's-
good to bring people up to speed to where we are to this point.
Okay.
And tonight's meeting's a good example of that too. That,
So I'll go through the dates, and, you know, if we wanna change them. So I have September 21st for Brattleboro Town. I have October 3rd.
I have September 22nd.
22nd.
Oh, Putney, yeah, you're right. Got it. So September 22nd, Putney.
The 26th we had for Vernon at one point.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if we need that.
The 26th, take it out or leave it in?
There was a question mark.
Yeah, I don't have it in. So I would, I think what Vernon is working on is probably more important than an information in Vernon, because they're actually not voting on it.
right, so it's not part of that process.
And we scheduled it without knowing what the vote in Vernon would be.
Right.
So
It's gonna be,
that was-
right.
So then I have October 3rd in Guilford,
Yeah.
October 11th in Dummerston,
I think that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
well, then I have a whole series of them in November, but I think we should stick to those.
Get through that.
Get the information about, like when we can warn Vernon, and then go from there.
Yeah.
Keep it.
So everyone has all those dates
Yeah.
up to this point? Excellent. So that's good. The next thing on our agenda is public
Yeah.
information.
So this relates to the question about mailings and documents and public information. How do you get information out? So as you all recall, we agreed to have BCTV cover these meetings for public information so that people can hear about what's going on.
Mhm.
The same process would be in place for any sort of mailings or documents that you want to create. Some districts, and I don't have copies of those, so at a future meeting, I'm going to make copies and share. They did kind of a single newsletter, one sheet information meeting. And I think as we think about dates like November, December, January, those would be things that we would be able to put together for the public. So any of those mailings, the way it works is they're funded initially through the SU and reimbursed by the AOE grant. Well, that's the $150,000 grant, but that's contingent on the merger being approved. So there is some risk, as we have with covering BCTV, that we're covering through the SU budget, which it's not exorbitant. You agreed to that in one of our November meetings. And so I think we should just confirm that's what you want to do for any sort of information, mailings, things
So,
like
Ron,
that.
just to be clear, any information that's put out would be the same for Guilford would be for all the towns in general. So if one piece was crafted, everyone gets the same information, just so we don't
Yeah,
have
that's what-
many sheets of paper
That's what
flying.
other districts have done. They it's the study committee that put together the the information, the letter, let's say, and it's consistent and it goes to each town.
So I guess my question to that is the reasons or the specifics and the details for each town can be very different.
Yeah.
And I would want Guilford to understand Guilford's position, which
Yeah.
is different than some of the other towns.
And I think you have the right to do a document like this that is very specific to Guilford.
But would it be covered by the grant?
Well, I have a question about the grant.
Hang on, please.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was my question is,
Yeah.
does it have to all be uniform material, or can each town create something specific to their town's unique circumstances?
Yeah, I think it's both. You
Okay.
know, a consistent message, and we'll look at some of the letters that districts have used.
Okay.
But then I think specific to a particular town makes sense.
Okay.
Ian?
What kind of cost are we talking about?
I don't know, I mean, I don't think you're gonna do,
I looked up to print what Ron just held up, at Staples or something, was a few $100 to get the population of Guilford, so it wasn't, what was the?
I think we spent $2,700 on BCTV.
Yeah, I think so.
I just have a quick question about funds, and that, as a taxpayer, my taxes basically fund the SU. And I don't believe that the study committee has an independent spending power. Its spending power has to be approved by the boards. So far as I know, the boards have only approved spending for one fiscal year, and that year is over. And they've only approved spending out of the AOE grant, not this transitional grant. Now, if this study committee is taking a risk that those funds will not come out of a grant because a merger is not approved, you are basically spending taxpayer money, and you're individuals who are not answerable to the taxpayer. I think that any budget or any amounts spent from the SU Treasury that go towards mailings or anything that is not covered by the state grant, and I don't know if that grant has been extended. I will ask Donna Russo-Savage tomorrow, but I haven't seen any vote by this committee to extend the grant for another year. I haven't heard any discussions about it at the SU level, nor have I seen it in the minutes. I would urge you to be careful about spending taxpayer funds without board approval. I think this is something that needs to go back to each board for board approval.
Thank you.
And just to clarify, that initial $20,000 grant can only be used on facilitation and legal counsel. So it hasn't funded any of the public information.
And it has been extended.
It has been extended?
Okay. All
By
right.
whom?
By the state.
But who applied? Who submitted the paperwork? for
The study
extension?
committee.
Who signed the documents?
The AOE, obviously informed by Donna Russo-Savage, knows the status of this committee, and invited all study committees in this situation to acknowledge that they're interested in an extension of the grant.
Were any members of this committee made aware of that extension?
Well, it's pretty obvious that the committee is continuing its work since June 30th.
I would object to the fact that it hasn't even been brought to the study committee's attention.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Yes.
So I was looking back at Donna Russo-Savage's presentation, and she said in that presentation that in the non-accelerated merger, we don't get the $150,000 transition grant. And then in this document here, honestly, it's from way back, it says transition facilitation grant of $150,000, whichever is less, accelerated model only.
No.
On this that was given, so that's just,
changed.
that's
Yeah.
changed.
We know we have a deadline
Okay.
of
July 17th.
July
Okay.
of 2017, right?
Okay, because when I saw that, I thought, whoa, wait a minute, she said it very clearly, I kept playing that tape over, so it's helpful
Yeah.
to have the tape, so.
It was one of those, I think it was one of those changes that has come down.
Okay,
as
that
they're-
makes
As
good
they're doing their
sense.
process up at the state level.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, all right. Anything else on public information stuff? All right, so, I wanna give folks in the public, as we tend to do, some time at the end. We've had some time in the middle here, which is a little unusual for us, but wanna do that, and then we'll talk about future meetings. So if people can start thinking about, because looks like we need to definitely have at least one more meeting, before too long.
I just have a question.
Yeah.
So, given that there is a chance that we'll hear back that we need to do the Vernon vote earlier, if it is indeed a 90-day certification, which might take us then to December, and just a quick calculation, is there, if that were to happen, and we were to have to have a vote in December to do that piece of it, could we come back to the question about when the next set of votes could happen, and could we then use January as that event? Because the only reason I bring this up and why I'm concerned about waiting all the way into March is that for the date that you just gave us, which is that we have until July, and if the vote goes in a direction for non-merger, then the window that we have to consider what to do next, it gets smaller and smaller the longer we wait. So that's a concern that I have.
Mm-hmm. I think we can get that clarification.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so, members of the public that want to speak? All right. We started this way last time, let's start this way and work our way from my right, your left. To
Jody Normando, Dummerston. I was under the impression that we had until November 17 and not July 17, first of all. Second of all, as a member of the public that's been attending this stuff before the study committees were even formed, I am totally confused at this point. I'm totally confused. Frank goes around and around on the financials. I have no clue as to really what's going on. I can't imagine what the people are going to feel like, because there's no way that we can educate the people. The only way you can educate the people is by propaganda, and we've got the other side propaganda, and I think the people are just going to say, what the heck is going on? We talk to people daily, have no clue what Act 46 is. I just think we're crazy trying to figure out how to educate them without telling them what to do.
All right, thank you. Walter?
Walter Borough, Vernon. Thank you, and I mean no disrespect by this comment, but I appreciate the openness of tonight's meeting. I think there was a respectful interaction between the study committee members and the general public. I just have a general question which may be irrelevant. At the last meeting, the study committee approved the articles of agreement that were going to then be sent up. I presume any change, that is the official version until this body votes again to make the changes that were discussed this evening. And I know when you look at the minutes, the articles were approved with the changes discussed at the meeting, and maybe this is back to Inez's question, was that formal, approved by this committee version of the articles ever made public on the Act 46 website? Because I would presume this currently is not the approved version of the articles, at least that's my question.
It would have been the August 30th document, and that wasn't posted for some reason. And so this one, I need to get some clarification and then come, so this body did vote to change the dates, and I have to get clarification on at least 3 other issues, and I want to be able to bring that back and then, confirm with the study committee.
But I mean, it would be nice to see the version that was approved that mentions, for example, the non-commingled votes and that sort of thing that was discussed tonight. Because I believe that is the formal motion and approved version that this committee.
So I'll get the August 30th.
That would be great.
posted.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. Okay.
Paul Normando, Dummerston. A point and then a couple of questions. Regarding Frank's comment on valuation and how it's a wash should Vernon leave the district. I sort of question that, frankly, because you know, if you take one town leaves, it's a wash. What happens if a second town leaves? Is that a wash? A third town leaves. You know, as the burden of the debt on the building stays the same, and the number of participants available to pay for that debt decreases, it seems to me that it's logical to conclude that the remainders end up paying more money.
So if I can respond to that, because I think it's a logical question, makes sense, and we have covered that. The answer is, as long as those Vernon students still attend BUHS, those 100 students, and they pay tuition, that tuition charge is going to cover the cost of that debt payment. So if a second town leaves, and those students still attend BUHS, then again, there's really no significant impact on the remaining operating costs, because what you're talking about is new revenue to the entity that basically displaces the that what was once a tax rate based on a student count. It also goes back to that document that we published in all of the town reports, the school funding derivation of a tax rate, which is cost, number of students, and the tax rate. And the revenue factor is what you're missing in your assumption, and it's easy to do because it's not intuitive at first, but that is the school funding. It's the school budget minus revenue like tuition equals net cost divided by kids, but those kids are your kids, not tuition kids. And that's a cost per student calculation that goes right to the tax rate.
I knew you were going to say that. So my rebuttal to that is you're making an assumption also. And I'm not saying that it's a bad assumption, but it's an assumption that the number of students from Vernon that come here will continue to come here.
So that's an assumption based on 50 years.
Yeah.
They've had the choice to go to Pioneer, they've had the choice to go to anywhere else, but over 50 years, 80% of those kids have gone to Vernon. The Vernon board has had this discussion and said there's no indication that they're unhappy with the education at Brattleboro Union, so there's no reason for us to question a significant change.
Then why don't we disband the whole Union District and let all the Brattleboro pay tuition to the BUHS, let Putney pay tuition to BUHS, let Dummerston pay tuition to BUHS, and see how the system works.
It would raise our taxes.
I'm sorry?
It would raise our taxes each time.
I know. That's precisely.
So why would we do that?
I know. That's precisely what I'm saying. But okay, that's.
We agree. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Narber?
Yep. The other question, it's more of a question to the committee as a whole. What happens if, does the committee have a plan B should Vernon's petition to withdraw from BUHS fail in terms of a study committee and in terms of forming a unified district? That's more of a question, it's rhetorical at this point. I'm not expecting an answer, but I'm raising it as what if, because the committee thought about that. The third point is you talk about, let's see, it had to do with the articles. Oh, do the articles, now if you're changing the articles again, will they have to go back to the various school boards to be approved for the changes that you're making? I mean, the committee would have to vote on them, and I understand that the procedure is that they have to go to the various school boards for comment. So is that the case, or am I mistaken?
I would assume would have to go through the process again, but also we're still waiting to hear from the AOE about a date in which they would need it by too. So we have two factors to figure that piece out. One, because we're going to make some changes, and two, because we're going to get a date that they would like to see it by, so we have time to figure that out and get it to all the town school boards.
Thank you.
Yeah. Did you have something, Ken? Oh, okay. All right.
Very briefly, just to recap what I said before, and I would again urge
this body to reject commingling. It's not required by the statutes, and in fact, my reading of these statutes, and you should consult with your attorney, and if your towns have attorneys, consult with your town attorney, whether these statutes even give the study committee the power to vote to commingle, because my understanding is that only municipalities can, but that's something that only a municipal attorney can answer. My next comment is that I'm concerned that commingling is without real justification or statute requiring it, if not designed to, will certainly have the effect of masking the small town's lack of voting power in this unified district. And governance has always been an issue, and it's an issue whether it's at-large voting or direct representation. The other comment that just to tack on to my funding concern, it's a question of constitutional dimension, because you all are not elected by townspeople, and the state's position is that you're not actually answerable to the town boards. So any spending decisions you make pretty much amount to, I guess, sort of a taxation without representation problem. And that's a problem of constitutional dimension. So I urge you to talk to your boards and talk to your board's legal counsel and find out what this committee's spending power is. And that's all I have to say.
Very quick comment about the timing, and I am not sure, because I'm relatively new to this whole process here. I'm not on the education committee, but my understanding is that the July 17 date is in order to qualify for the incentives. And in my mind, if it means putting the vote off till town meeting day in March and losing the incentives, but having a better product and a more informed public, that makes sense, because the real drop dead date, I think, is July 2019.
All right. So
can I just comment?
Mm-hmm.
The July 17th or July 2017, if we don't meet that date, we lose small school grants. Small schools grants.
Do all the schools get small school grants?
Dummerston and Guilford do, yeah. So we lose that money, and we also lose $150,000 potential transition.
Yeah.
Right.
I get that there is a financial loss, but
I was thinking that you were talking about the incentives, the tax, because
tax, yeah.
It's more than just that.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Does that make sense now? Okay. So I've just one thing before we talk dates. It's been recommended, based on part of the public conversations and things like that, related to our last vote to send things to the AOE, things like that. Frank drafted a little motion I think it's good that we could do, and I'll just read what he said. That based on the committee action to change the Articles of Agreement, should the committee vote to notify the AOE that the revised document will be submitted in the future, and have that as a motion and a vote, and then that way we're cleaning up any question about the fact that there's changes coming, we're making changes.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Isn't that already presumed? So what we voted on with the Articles of Agreement was not this would be the final Articles of Agreement, but we voted to send it on to the state for comment. And so we've gotten the comment, and then now we're coming back to.
I think it addresses Walter's point, which is that there is a presumption that there was an action on a particular document, and this is just clarifying that document is there's a notice that it's going to be revised. We're asking it to essentially be deferred. I don't think we're going to have the state board review on September 20th.
Okay.
So it's really being public about that this date change is reschedule the committee's request, and there will be a future document submitted.
So I had assumed that would.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, but I think this clarifies it, because there's still.
And did get rid of the assumptions.
There's still clarification that I need, but it'll be coming in the future, so. I think it's.
So do you want to read that again?
Sure, I can read it one more time. Yeah. Based on the committee's action to change the document, should the committee vote to notify the AOE that the revised document will be submitted in the future? Is there a motion that way?
I move.
Moved and seconded? All right, second. All right. All right. Any other questions or comments on that? None? Okay. All in favor? Aye. Aye. All right. So that kind of cleans that up a little bit. I'll give that back to you all. And so I guess we just need, and maybe Ron, because you have some work to do, that maybe you could propose when we should meet again in the future, so we can schedule our next meeting.
Keeping in mind that in 2 weeks from yesterday, we have our Brattleboro public forum.
Yes.
So it probably should be before that.
What's that date?
The
21st
of
September.
Just wondering if we should consider putting that off, because we have to get educated on this, and we have to get the documents out. I mean, if anything's like what commingling is now, I think we all know more about commingling. It sounds better than it is, but I think we all know more about commingling than we ever thought we would, and so it might make sense to just take an extra week. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'll have the information clearly, but we will not have had a chance to review it prior to Brattleboro town meeting. I don't think to meet next week is gonna make sense.
So are we gonna take the 21st out, or what are we gonna do?
Yeah, I was gonna say, why don't we just make the 21st?
Well, because Brattleboro town has a regular board meeting.
They have a regular board meeting that night, and they were going to do a forum as part of their regular board meeting.
Oh, that's right.
So I can't take
And
that
Putney was
away.
going to do the same thing the next night, so we can't just, we can get rid of the forum piece of their regular board meetings, but we can't really do the meeting.
I mean, maybe a suggestion is, on the 22nd, Putney will have their board meeting, and instead of doing a information meeting, we have a study committee meeting.
Yeah, and we could move our meeting, we could have our meeting 5 to 6, like we've done before. And then do
Yeah.
6.
I cannot do a meeting on the 22nd, but I'm just one person.
So the 21st, as far as the Act 46 part, we don't need to be at.
We'll cancel the forum with Brattleboro on the 21st. Brattleboro will have their regular town school board meeting.
Fine.
And then what we're proposing is having an Act 46 meeting at 6 o'clock in Putney on the 22nd.
Yeah.
And by then we'll have clarification, and then that way, for the next forum in October, that will definitely have enough time for the Guilford forum, and Brattleboro and Putney can reschedule forums accordingly. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yep.
Excellent. So the 22nd, we will see each other all again then. In Putney. Yes.
I might not be there. Just realized, but may not matter.
Okay.
Alice would be.
But Alice would be there.
22nd, yeah, I'll make sure I'm there.
Okay. Great.
I would suggest that you take some food.
Yes. There's plenty of food over here. Please, everyone help yourselves. And we need a motion to adjourn. Moved by Richard.
Second.
Seconded by Alice. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.
I gotta get my motions in. I don't get to vote very often.
There you go.